This is a man's world.
What does it mean to be a man today? Should you lay your masculinity on with a trowel, or simply like big girls at the sight of a fresh vegetable? New yob, new sissy, neutered man, none of them really know. All they can offer are grotesque parodies of masculinity, or cheap imitations of femininity.
You see, man made the car to take us over the road. Man made.
What's wrong with these boys? Whether hard man or soft lad, these bozos all share something. They're all the shell-shocked foot soldiers of the sex war, uncertain how to respond to a post-feminist world.
Woman's only human. You should understand.
And what does it mean to be a woman today? The confusion runs just as deep. Women have been told for so long that they're obliged to have it all, that anything less seems like settling for failure.
If you wanna do right.
The career woman who chooses not to have children is made to feel unfulfilled. The woman who chooses to devote herself to home and family is made to feel second-rate. And women who try to balance both worlds are made to feel guilty. The sex war is over, but nobody feels like the winner. We have striven so hard for equal rights and equal orgasms that we've forgotten that women are more than honorary men, and men are more than chicks with dicks. We've forgotten that men and women are equal, but different.
Women are treated still as sequels rather than equals. I mean, we're only getting 75 pence in the pound to what men are getting, and yet we still hear all the time that feminism has achieved everything that it should have achieved and that we're now supposed to be post-feminist. I think anyone who calls themselves a feminist is a woman who has kept her wonder bra and burnt her brain. We have a long way to go.
Buck up, Amelia. Get busy, the breadwinner's back.
50 years ago, England didn't even tap its foot, let alone swing. Then, gender roles were very clearly defined. Men made money and women made homes.
A new cooker? Well, I never. Very neat.
Father brought home the bacon and Mother made bacon sandwiches. But just how good were the good old days?
Come along, dish up the grub and let's see how the new cook's getting on.
Men got automatic respect and their tea on the table. Their word was law.
Yes, by jingo. Delicious, my dear. Delicious.
But the old-fashioned guy was a distant, solitary figure, discouraged from displays of emotion, separated from his children, excluded from his home life. There were perks. Men had job satisfaction, economic power, and sexual freedom. Men had the monopoly on orgasms. If there were 2 orgasms going, the geezer would have both of them. Grace under pressure, stoicism, restraint. These were the manly virtues. In the 50s and early 60s, every suburban dad was a little Ernest Hemingway. You've come a long way, mate. All of it downhill.
I mean, things were considered to be masculine qualities, which were breadwinning, independence, strength, pride. All of those are now denigrated. Women are basically saying to men, you're not really needed anymore. We don't want you as husbands, we don't want you as fathers, we don't want you as role models, we don't want you as breadwinners. Go away and play. And they are playing at sort of very exaggerated, macho, cartoon-like versions of masculinity, the Schwarzenegger role model, raping and pillaging. Young men are just testosterone-crazed rogue elephants with no connection with a broader civilized kind of society.
If I were a kid growing up now, it's almost as if you'd be ashamed about being a man, because everything you see about what men do, you're being told how bad it is. So what is it that you're supposed to be that is good? And since there doesn't seem to be anything that's kind of morally or positively good, all that's left is just having fun, getting pissed, going out with the lads.
But it had to change, and it did. Men became more involved in parenting, women entered the workplace, and finally you could get a blowjob without getting married. But the end of sexual apartheid brought its own problems. These days, women take a power breakfast in the morning, buy you dinner in the evening, and give birth during their lunch break, and it looks good on them. But some men are ready to burn their wife fronts, complaining that they are now the oppressed gender, the disposable sex, the true victims.
Men will only be a disposable sex if all women take up lesbianism, which is only a slip of the tongue, I suppose. But, yeah, and we do need you to kill the spiders in the bathtub. So, I mean, you do still have a role in our lives.
The bias against women operates in the workplace, the bias against men operates in the family, and people are beginning to understand that equality in one place has to be matched by equality in the other. And so I don't think you should penalise women, but you should just stop penalising men.
Here they come, the animals, 2 by 2.
Men die younger than women. The suicide rate for men is 4 times that of women. In divorce cases, women too often use their children as a rod for their ex-husband's back. Women have careers, men work. Men have no choice. Those few sensitive souls who choose to stay home with the baby bouncer and vegetable patch are made to feel like freaks. Quite rightly, of course. A man's sense of himself comes through work, which is why unemployment for a man is devastating. A man's work is not something to casually pick up and put down, like a magazine in a dentist's waiting room. Men will never have the options open to women, to work, to bring up children, or to combine both. And yet it would be wrong for men to weep and moan too much. Simply, it would be unmanly. It would go against the grain of what it means to be a man. Forbearance, the ability to bite your lip, to play the cards that life has dealt you. And that's the problem with the boo-hoo brigade of neutered men. They've forgotten how to act like real men.
One of the stresses that men have had for the last couple of centuries, and that because of the stiff upper lip or whatever they really haven't complained about, is the pressure to work, the pressure to be a breadwinner, the pressure of actually spending the best hours of your week, the best years of your life, actually in a job that may not be fulfilling, that may not be creative, that may not actually satisfy you on any level apart from putting the bread on the table. Now, if that pressure is genuinely being taken off, then I think we'll find a whole range of other qualities and values, both in individual men and in life in general, that we can explore more fully.
Today, the taboo against men crying in public has gone. It no longer means you're a sissy, it means you're a wonderful guy. Men, the manipulative bastards, now use tears as conclusive proof of their sensitivity. One of the bleakest events in the evolution of the modern male was the night in Italia 90 that Paul Gascoigne burst into tears. Gazza started a snivelling flood. Now everyone is doing it, not just girly tennis players. Even big, hairy-assed politicians like Bob Hawke of Australia have cried in public. Where will it end?
I think there are a number of ways that men can get in touch with their emotions. The first thing is having the space where you feel safe to do it. It will not happen, you know, in an office. You're not going to start getting angry with your boss and be fired. You're not going to start crying in front of a client and lose the account. So there are a lot of practical necessities that have to be kind of sorted out first. I think men need to feel safe. They need to be actually in a place which doesn't have any reference to the rest of their lives. What in ancient times would be called a kind of sacred space would often be out in the woods or, you know, on a mountain or in a desert somewhere. For us, you know, we could go camping or just find a room somewhere that no one else, you know, has any association with.
Most men I know are emotional bonsai. You know, you have to whack the fertilizer on to get any feelings out of them. And that affects the old sex life too, because if men are emotionally stunted like that, they confine affection to times of erection, which is never a way to a woman's heart, really. So I think that that's one area which men could definitely work on. Whether running around in the forest hugging trees is the way to do it, I don't know. Those type of men, I think, are fairly indulgent. I think these are the sort of blokes who have love bites on their mirror.
Time to pull yourself together, man, or we will be shaving our legs next. A generation of empowered women should not breed a race of neutered males. The burning of bras 30 years ago made a political point. Burning your Y fronts makes you look like a prat. And women, in these years of sexual apartheid, the attitude was, let them make cakes.
No rest for the wicked. Forward, Mr. Jones.
The home was the woman's fiefdom, even if the world did not take her seriously beyond the garden path. In the home, she was the almighty in a pinny.
Feminism said, in its early stages, a very admirable thing, which is that you should get rid of the restrictions for both men and women. You know, men and women should feel free to express who they are, irrespective of old stereotypes. But in fact, the stereotypes on male behaviour haven't disappeared at all. If, as a man, you start talking about issues, you know, that might affect you in a negative way, it's amazing how fast a feminist will call you a wimp. I've often been called a wimp, for example, for saying things like men can get beaten up by their partners, or men might worry about their jobs or something. You know, it's like, oh, don't be so soft. And there's even an ideological thing. You're not allowed to complain if you're a man, or to raise any issues if you're a man, until women have finished their say.
But today we are surrounded by women who feel obliged to act like men. One of the things that women should leave to men is getting drunk. Being drunk is like having a moustache. It looks good on a man and terrible on a woman. Raised voices, casual violence, crazy laughter, unwise sex. It makes a man look like a fool, but it makes a woman look insane. There are some things in this world that women do better than men. Weeping hysterically, shopping and cleaning up around the house. Women do all these things brilliantly, and we should go down the pub and let them get on with it. Too much drink tends to remove a woman's dignity, pride and underpants, usually in that order. When a woman looks good pissing out of train windows, that's when I'll be ready to do some serious drinking with them. If the new lass feels free only to behave as badly as men, that seems like a curiously tawdry sort of freedom. We should stop trying so hard to resemble each other. Who's wearing the trousers around here? Who's paying for the drinks? Okay, so the modern woman pays her way. But heterosexuality is a celebration of differences.
I think that's true. I mean, for a long time, we pretended that men and women were exactly the same, especially in the feminist movement. We said, no, it's all nurture, not nature. But then, of course, you have your own children, and you've got a son, you know. I had a boy and I gave him dolls and, you know, cookery things, and at 3 months, his truck gene kicked in, his bus gene, his motorbike gene. And when I had a little girl and I gave her buses, motorbikes and trucks, her doll gene and her cooking gene kicked in. So you have to admit that men and women are different. And, I mean, have you ever seen a woman play air guitar? You know, mime a Jimi Hendrix guitar solo in a mirror, or fiddle with a fridge thermostat just for fun? I mean, you are from another planet.
It was quite interesting. There was a survey of why women divorce in Scandinavia. Now, Scandinavia, of course, has been held up by feminists as being a wonderful environment where all these sort of traditional roles, men and women, got rid of. It's, the jargon says, a gender-free environment has been encouraged. The researchers found to their astonishment that women who were married to new men were divorcing them in droves, not on the grounds that their ironing wasn't good enough, but because they were so boring. And the researchers came up with this fascinating idea that sexual attraction may be based on difference rather than sameness.
Feminism has imposed a terrible orthodoxy on the modern woman. She's expected to have a career as surely as she was once expected to have children. A woman is not free to devote herself to her children. Society and friends conspire to make the best homemaker in the world feel inferior to the worst shorthand typist. And yet women are not free to throw themselves totally into their careers. You can see them all over the big city. Women between the age of 30 and 40 who can hear the terrible sound of their biological clock.
We know that career woman, having it all myth doesn't work. And in fact, motherhood is the hardest, most hideous job in the world. And I think it's the last great sacred cow we need to whack on the old Barbie. The idea that motherhood is the ultimate fulfillment for a woman. I mean, it really isn't. You end up only being able to use a word with sort of 2 syllables in it. If you do use a word with more than 3 syllables, it will be the word tranquilizer, because that's what you'll need. So we've got a lot of readjusting to do as well. So it's not just men who are in a state of flux. It's a good word, isn't it? Flux.
The thing which really divides the sexes fundamentally at a certain level is when you have kids. And you can go through your adolescence and your early adulthood, and really the lives you lead as men and women are pretty similar. And then suddenly, you know, this squalling mass of puke arrives, and all of a sudden it's amazing how quickly all the old roles kind of thud into place again.
Early feminism saw women enslaved by domestic chores and equated female emancipation with black liberation. But black people were thrown in chains and dragged off to work under the lash for 500 years. That's a slightly rougher fate than being expected to do a bit of housework. Working on a cotton plantation, it's not quite the same as going to Tupperware parties and doing a bit of light vacuuming.
My wife likes the way it washes, rinses and spin dries the whole wash in less than half an hour. And I like the way it gets my shirts really clean.
Women have been encouraged to have a sentimental view of themselves. Feminism and its ugly kid sister, political correctness, insist that all women are saintly life-givers, in touch with their feelings, brimming with baby milk and compassion, while men are responsible for the troubles in the world. Does anyone really still buy this mawkish crud?
Mummy wants a new Hoover because she's got lots of work to do.
We are told on the one hand that women are less violent than men. On the other hand, we're told that women should be allowed to go into the army and be soldiers because they're every bit as competent on the battlefield as men are. Well, which is it? Is it that women are less violent or that they're as violent? Because it can't be both. We're told, for example, that if you ask a woman coming into the office about premenstrual tension, that's a disgusting sexist inquiry, and she has every right, you know, to complain about any future employer who asked her about that. On the other hand, premenstrual tension is an excuse against murder. Well, is premenstrual tension such a terrible thing that it can drive somebody to commit murder, or is it such an insignificant thing that you can't even ask about it in an interview? And I'm sure we could find things that were just as contradictory about men. And all these things arise out of a society that is desperately trying to figure out the degree of difference and the degree of sameness.
Not all bad parents are men. Not all men are rapists. Most men are not even sexual harassers. Most men have to work up the courage to do a little light flirting. Declaring all men are rapists is as dumb as saying all women are hairdressers. Women are still too willing to demonise men. If your partner leaves you for a hot little number half your age, if you could weep with exhaustion after bringing home the bacon and cooking it too, well, that's not men, dear. That's life.
Men do a very good job of demonising themselves. I mean, just look at the Tory front benches. I mean, these are men who've gone from puberty to adultery, you know. And most women I know, their main concern is with their husbands being unfaithful. I mean, surveys show that that is a major preoccupation of British women, that their husbands are going to be sexually incontinent. And you blokes do tend to think that monogamy is something you make dining room tables out of.
Don't demonise us for being different. A woman is a creature who mates for life. A man is a creature who mates when his girlfriend is out of town. That's why we see the wreckage of so many relationships all around us, because the typical man and the typical woman want very different things from their union. A woman wants a partner, a man wants a lover. They yearn for a meaningful bond. We pine for meaningless sex. To a woman, the start of a relationship is when love truly begins. But to men, it's the moment when love starts to wither and die. And that's why we will always be calling to each other from different sides of the sky.
Most women want to have a husband who loves them, want to have a partner in their lives who can be, you know, a contribution, can be a help, can be a father for their children. And I think that the kind of sex war and the setting up of the sexes in opposition, you know, it's a good game for people in university campuses and for people who go into social work because they have a personal agenda. But it's a long way removed from the actual desires of real men and women. And if you don't believe me, watch Blind Date, because every Saturday night we are reminded very forcefully that what young men and young women really want to do is get off with one another.
The best thing about the old days was that men and women knew what was expected of them. They knew exactly what it meant to be a man or a woman. You might not be doing what you wanted, but nobody expected you to do it all. If the sex war was a real war, it would have been the Great War. A lot of blood has been spilt, a few boundaries have been altered, but not much feels like it has really changed. The old roles have gone forever, but they have yet to be truly replaced. A man without a job, or a woman without children, is still considered a freak. Men and women have all assumed extra responsibilities, but the myth of having it all has become the messy reality of doing it all.
I don't think men know what women want from men anymore. I think there are a lot of confusing messages out there. You pick up any two Sunday papers and you're going to be given two completely different versions of what women want from men. And my sense is, and this is not a sort of sulk position, is that actually we need to work out what we want from ourselves, first of all, and then we'll actually know perhaps what we can offer women, or get together with women for some kind of rapprochement.
Every working mum I know is exhausted, because we've got to be so many things. We've got to be, you know, career woman, sex goddess, earth mother, and the housewife superstar too, because of course men have increased their contribution to housework by 3.6 seconds a week. You know, probably the time it takes to put the toilet seat down. So we've got to do so many things. You know, most working mums I know are at that stage of motherhood where they're putting the kids under the sink and the lethal household substances within reach. It's too hard.
Neither men or women are free to be what they want to be. Duties that we should consider a privilege, bringing up our children, earning a living, finding someone to love, all become sources of stress. But what else are we here for? Women and men can learn to love each other again. The way forward is for men and women to realise that we're still not that equal, but thankfully, very different. You can fake an orgasm, but you can't fake an erection. And for that, we should be grateful.
From Australia to be here today, will you give it...